Hello, everyone. This is BigReed with another episode of Gaming's Lost Memories. This is episode 20, and we're going to be focusing on the Nintendo Switch. So, relatively recently, there was some interesting murmurs, rumors, news, leaks, whatever you'd like to call it, regarding the Nintendo Switch 2, or hopefully whatever the successor is. It's kind of interesting because it included some hardware specs, even some, kind of images that looked very similar to the current Nintendo Switch. It looked a little more streamlined and everything like that. But I thought it would be a great time to talk about this console, so the Nintendo Switch, in a couple capacities. So the first kind of being, I just finished. The previous podcast was how we got here, right? So focusing on the Nintendo Wii U, excuse me, and how that failure led to Nintendo's second highest selling console of all time behind the Nintendo DS, which, okay, the Nintendo DS, 154 million units, the Nintendo Switch, 143 million roughly. So it's close. Man, it would be great for Nintendo to somehow find a way to, sell another 10 or 11 million of these things just to kind of beat the DS. But I think ultimately they would have to set out as an organization to be like, hey, we're not really looking to make the best business decisions right now. We would rather just beat this record and maybe even ship a couple extra million more to knock out the PS2 as the greatest selling console of all time. The PS2 and the Nintendo DS, both very deserving of the sales that they got, by the way. But yeah, it would be kind of fun for Nintendo just to release a Switch Pro and delay the Switch 2 launch another year and just be like, yo, you guys got to buy this thing. Like we need to sell another like 12 million copies to be the best selling console of all time. So just follow us on this journey here. But I think ultimately, it's time. So the Nintendo DS, that's interesting because that sold gangbusters because of a new technology. It was portable. Phones were not popular yet. Like they were, everybody had a phone, but it was really not good at doing anything, and it was even worse at gaming. Like the iPhone, didn't launch until 2007, and honestly, the App Store, how we know it, and games being on phones, that was even, like further along down the line. So one thing I'll say there, and hold on here, I might have accidentally turned up my microphone, Goofy. So I apologize if there's an audio difference there. I'll play around with that. I might have accidentally pressed the button. But the Nintendo DS kind of had a cultural difference, and also it had a technology difference, in the landscape of the market was different. So that led to a lot of sales where you would see, kids playing Nintendo DS's, and now they're going to have an iPad. They're going to have an iPad. They might even have a phone depending on their age. So the sales for that one are unique. I don't want to say it was like easier because the original DS Fat model didn't sell that great. Like the PSP and that were like neck and neck, with Nintendo kind of just edging it out a little bit. But the Nintendo Switch sales, those were earned. So, and it was earned through them not dipping on their quality as a developer and still pumping out amazing titles on the Nintendo Wii U. And, they had, they could always fall back on the 3DS, which was selling a lot better than the Wii U, obviously. But they could ride out the failure of the Wii U and still sell software and still have times of profitability, during that, to really gear themselves up for what the Nintendo Switch was. So they learned a lot of lessons with the 3DS and the Wii U. And one of them was, hey, the technology has gotten a lot better. The technology where you can have a more powerful console in a portable aspect. And when we have, so Nintendo forever had a portable market and a home console market. Well, those lines are getting blurred more and more. I mean, look at the technology we carry around in our pockets. Like those processors are amazing. You can play full blown video games. You can watch, 4K, HD, DVD movies. Like you can stream on them. So the quality is so much better and so much physically smaller. The costs have come down a lot. And most importantly, Nintendo at that time had to have two pieces of hardware and development teams working on that hardware. It was not easy to be like, okay, I'm going to develop a game for the 3DS and just port it to the Wii U and vice versa. So Nintendo learned a lot of lessons, and they allowed themselves to. Sometimes as an organization, you have to make your decision, release your hardware, especially as a video game company. And I think a lot of companies kind of forget that in the video game industry, that it's a bit unique and different, meaning you kind of have to make a decision and roll with it. And over the years, having just watched the game industry for 30 so years, or, they will stick with the decision. And then when it comes time to make their next decision or their next hardware, they've made all those decisions and they're going to operate as that. So Nintendo, survived the awkwardness of the Wii U and the failed launch of the 3DS as well, which we never even covered that really in podcast format. But they learned a lot of lessons, and I think most importantly was how to market, position, and communicate what the Nintendo Switch was to the industry, to the tech industry, to the consumer products industry, to the video game industry. So not just video games, consumer electronics, like tech, everything. And I remember the first commercial for it. I read that it was during the Super Bowl. I don't remember that, but I do remember watching the commercial like 6 times. It's a few minutes long, and it's very simple, and almost like, I'm trying to think of like how to say this. Like sometimes tech commercials can be kind of coy, or they'll be a little bit creative or artistic in their message. Apple's a great example. It's like, hey, look at these AirPods with your new iPhone, and everybody's like dancing and flying around in the sky and floating, and things are shape shifting around them. And it's like, yeah, look how cool this experience is. And you're just like, I don't know what that means, but I want the AirPods. This was kind of on the nose. It was literally just, hey, you can plug the console in at home. The Joy-Cons removed so multiple people can play. You can click them back in, pick it up, and continue playing anywhere you go. And they kept making the it's well known now, but the clicking sound of the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons clicking in, which that's also awesome. They need to like, it has a very distinct sound. You hear it click in, it's a satisfying sound, you know what I mean? But the message was, hey, you can play this at home, pick it up, and take it with you and play the exact same game on the go. And I think that was absolutely amazing. It was a little on the nose. They weren't trying to be clever or cute here, but I think after the Wii U, they really needed to just hammer home what the heck this thing was. And this was, oh my gosh, all the way back to 2017, I think the Nintendo Switch launched. So coming off of the Wii U, there's a lot of features that didn't transition over that still just don't exist on the Switch. The Switch basically has no social media features, no easy way to chat like built in. Doesn't have Miiverse or anything like that. That died kind of with the Wii U, which was sad. It doesn't really have custom backgrounds, any type of like backgrounds. That was a common thing with the 3DS. You could go and buy, what do you? I don't even know what you call them, like wallpapers, backgrounds, themes. That's what they would call them. And that's not the most necessary thing, but it was nice. And on the Nintendo Switch, they still just have black and white as their theme, which is kind of funny 7 years on. The eShop is also kind of just a mess. It's like an unorganized storage unit that has everything in it. Like anything you would like, everything you look at it and you're like, oh, I can't believe this is here. Oh, I can't believe this is here. Everything's in here. But it's just kind of like jumbled and all over the place, and you have to like dig to find anything. So they left some things behind, but the thing that Nintendo focused solely on was this thing is good at playing video games. The Joy-Cons are separated controllers that you can use, and you can play it at home, you can play it on the go. And, either way, you plug it in on your TV at home, pick it up, take it with you. I can't begin to, explain like how much I like that concept. The core concept of the Switch is just a complete home run. I think it's something that, Sony definitely wants to copy. Sony basically waits 3 to 5 years and then copies Nintendo. Or in terms of, the PlayStation, they just kind of steal it and release it as their own and pretend that Nintendo didn't, it wasn't Nintendo's idea. But it's such a great concept that I think it wants to be copied, and I just honestly, I don't think it's going to be, which kind of puts Nintendo once again in competition of its own. So Microsoft is busy killing the entire brand. Sony is like, okay, I guess we're just going to win due to Microsoft's incompetence, but they can't kind of compete directly with the Switch, and the Switch doesn't need to compete directly with the PS5. But what's also interesting is it kind of doesn't need to, but they also share, similar games and everything like that. So this last generation was just completely bizarre, and it's almost like the Nintendo Switch is on an island by itself. And it's a good island to be a part of, 143 million units sold. And I kind of wanted to focus on the software. So, I want to see. Okay, the top sellers on the platform as of June 30th of this year. I want to just read these numbers and explain their impact and what this means. So, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, 62 million copies. Animal Crossing New Horizons, 45 million copies. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, 34 million copies. Breath of the Wild, 32 million copies. Super Mario Odyssey, 28 million copies. This one is bonkers to me, these two. Pokemon Sword and Shield, 26 million copies. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, 25 million copies. Super Mario Party, 20 million copies. The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, 20 million copies. New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe, 17 million copies. I think what is absolutely crazy here is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. They didn't even have to make a new Mario Kart. Mario Kart 8 rocks, by the way. But they got to focus on, new tracks and everything like that. 62 million copies is absolutely insane. Now, Nintendo has done a really great job of not needing to price cut the console. And that used to be kind of a big deal probably like 15, 20 years ago, where a lot of people would be cost focused, but it was a way to move consoles. It's not a good way either. As a video game company, you don't want to go the route of Sega or Nintendo during, like the GameCube era, where your console's not selling and you keep dropping the price, and you might get like a boost in sales, but it's very short lived. Like at one point the GameCube was being sold for $99, and it wasn't helping. It was Nintendo needed to basically move these and get these off the shelf. and get rid of them. But selling it for $99 was awesome. Oh my gosh, could you imagine buying a brand new console for $99? Like, that would be complete. That'd be a great time. But yeah, like you don't want to just have to drop the price. So the first thing is Nintendo has done an absolutely amazing job at not needing to drop the price of the Switch. So Mario Kart 8, everybody can play Mario Kart. I think it makes sense that it's the best-selling game on the console. It was also bundled a lot. So, as opposed to, you know, discounting the Switch. So I want to say there's several models, which I'll get to the point, but they would bundle it. So instead of discounting the Switch, it's like, hey, we can throw a game in there, or we can throw, Nintendo Switch Online, in there. So you can have a $2.99 bundle, not have to discount your hardware, but add a holiday, exclusive Mario Kart 8 Deluxe bundle for 3 months in there. That was very smart of them. It's better to package some software in, add some value there, and people can start playing immediately. And you also sell another copy of your game. Get that into the hands, because you're probably going to have an attach rate of. I'm not sure what the Switch's attach rate is. I have a feeling it's a bit higher, but you're not just going to play Mario Kart 8. You're going to buy like 5 games or so, over the next 6 months. Animal Crossing. I'm so happy that Animal Crossing, even though like I played the new one, and for me, I liked it, but I kind of want to just play the GameCube one again. um, and this one added a lot of additional gameplay elements, like crafting. Items can break, which that didn't bother me at all in Zelda because of the style of game it is. But in Animal Crossing, it didn't grab me as much, but I could not be happier that it sold 45 million copies, because like it just, first of all, it came out, I believe, during COVID, so everyone was stuck at home, and it's like, hey, you can play this and not have to worry about COVID. It gives you something to do inside. But what was so cool about that is that franchise deserved it. Animal Crossing is absolutely awesome, and it makes me so happy that it has exploded in popularity, because like playing the GameCube version, I'm like, man, this game rocks. I wish it would sell better, and it did sell better with the DS and 3DS versions, but man, it's just so good to see. Super Smash Brothers, that was the best-selling one in that series. The best-selling Zelda game, finally, Ocarina of Time was dethroned. Breath of the Wild, 32 million copies. Like, it makes me happy to see that Breath of the Wild, like Zelda, is selling more than Mario, which is crazy. Mario, another great game. Both Pokemon Scarlet and Violet like just came out. The fact that they're selling 25 plus million copies is absolutely awesome. The new Zelda selling 20 million copies almost instantly is great. It's just really nice seeing a boost in some of those franchises. Mario Kart being super popular, Animal Crossing just exploding in popularity. But I think what is super impressive is Nintendo's always had a really good attach rate on their game franchises, but not like this. Like selling 30 million units for Zelda, I think they're like, whoa, we can do this. Like Animal Crossing now being, in their top 3 franchises, they're like, whoa, like we can, actually really take our time and invest in the next one, because we know it's going to be a worthwhile investment. But it's the software attach rate just exploded. And when you sell 143 million, consoles, your attach rate, even if it's a low percentage, is still going to be millions of games sold, in a franchise. So Nintendo has just absolutely hit the mark with what the product is, how it speaks to consumers, and the sales have followed. Now, what are some of my thoughts on the Switch just overall? It's my favorite console of the last decade. Not even like close. I really like the 3DS as well. The PlayStation 4 was pretty solid. but goodness gracious, like it's exactly what I was looking for. And it's really funny because like in the past when you would have a home console and then a portable console, I always loved portable consoles. I love the hardware. Oh my gosh, they would release like new colors of the Game Boy. I could look at Game Boys like all day, like just with different shells, different colors. Like if I see a Game Boy in the wild, like I'll be like, oh, like I'll definitely like I have my Game Boy actually right next to me. I actually have a Game Boy with an LED screen. Um, and like I love it. I love the designs. I love portable consoles, and I would switch between them. So like I would get on a kick, and for 6 months I would only play like consoles, and you'd have that experience, and then you'd switch to portables, and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm never gonna quit playing portables. This is the best. I can literally put like Twitch on or a stream or like Bob's Burgers in the background and just kind of kick my feet up and like play my console. But having the best of both worlds really kind of like spoke to me, and it honestly just makes a lot of sense. So saying all of that, I can't imagine Nintendo ever going back. So this sounds absolutely crazy. So the PlayStation 5, you have Sony announcing the PS5 Pro for $700,000, and like all this chaos that's kind of going on out there. I have an Xbox, but like having to sit on my couch and play my Xbox is difficult. It's great. Like you get the nice big screen, you get a powerful console, you get more power, you get to see like bigger, more beautiful games, and I get that. I really do. But now it's difficult because I don't like to sit on the couch and have to stare. You know what I mean? I want to be able to move. I want to be able to take it upstairs, hang out with my wife and everything like that. Let her watch her shows. And if I do that, I have to be all the way downstairs, in the living room. It's like, oh, man. Or, I'd have to lug my Xbox into my setup. So I have a desk, like an L-shaped desk, basically. And I'd have to lug the Xbox and put it over there. Like, I can't play it on the big screen. I have to play it on a monitor. I get it, but for me, it doesn't work. And I think there's a lot of people like me out there that are busy, that, have kids, that have responsibilities, that, might only be able to sit down and play a game for 15 minutes now. But you want that console-like experience as well. And Nintendo was able to encapsulate that in the Switch. It's literally the best of both worlds. You can play little short bursts of games. You can throw it on your TV or monitor. Like probably after this, I'm going to stream for a little bit here and play some Pokemon Unite. And I can do that. And, I have a dock set up. And then later I can just take it out of the dock, take it upstairs, and continue playing the exact same game, the same experience with... It's the same. It's on a smaller screen, but the frame rate might be a little bit different. You might be like 60 frames versus 30, but it's still the same experience, the same game. That's absolutely amazing. It's also crazy when you play something like The Witcher 3 or like a larger game experience just straight up on it. It's so cool. Or you're playing one of the Zeldas or something like that, and you're playing it on you see it on the big beautiful screen. Then it's the same dang experience on the screen itself. So that was really cool as well. And one thing that I will say with what are like next steps for Nintendo is I don't see how they ever get back to having two consoles. I won't say they won't, because Nintendo's absolutely crazy and they just, they'll just make decisions that they think are right and they just roll with them. And they've shown that they want to continue being creative. The Nintendo Wii had motion controls, the 3DS had a 3D screen. Like they like to be creative and try new gameplay ideas, and they will always want to reach, and they want to be unique. They want to have fresh ideas, and I think that's what makes them the most interesting video game company out there. And for me, this is the one time where you do not do that. Like, I think from a business standpoint, I think from a creativity standpoint, I think from a technology standpoint, I think you just release whatever, the Switch Pro, quote unquote, was as the Switch 2, better screen, hopefully slightly revised Joy-Cons, but honestly, if they're the same, that's fine. I don't have a problem with them. Hopefully they fix the drift. Better screen, OLED screen, extra processing power, more RAM, redesign the eShop, and just make it the same dang thing but more powerful, backwards compatible, and Mario Kart 9. Get you know what I mean? Get ready for a new Mario Kart or a new Mario, something to launch with it to kind of show the power difference and make it backwards compatible from the original Switch library. I don't think they need to be fancy here. I think they need to release the same exact thing for the next 5 years. I think Nintendo could get away with. So just a heads up, your standard console length used to be 5 years. So that used to be for like for several generations. So you had what, the NES, Super Nintendo, the 64, the GameCube. So for probably about 4 generations in a row. And oh geez, I'm trying to think of when the Wii lasted too long because it was old. But long story short, you had like 4 or 5 generations where it's roughly 5 to 6 years, and that makes a lot of sense. But you always ran into parents and people like, oh, there's this new thing out. Well, people are getting more accustomed to it. Apple releases a new iPhone every single year. Like, it's getting more and more common for things like that. Now, you don't need to upgrade every single year, but maybe every 3 to 5 years you do get a new phone or a new tablet or something like that. And that kind of matches, the 5 years of the video game industry. So from a technology standpoint too, I think the technology is better now, where there were let me rephrase that. There were larger jumps in the past, and now the jumps are there but smaller. So you can, look at a video game now and a video game 10 years ago, and the biggest difference, when they released the HD collection, they might have given it a more stable frame rate and frames per second. So you might be at, like a stable 30 or, 45 to 60 frames per second. And 1080p is the standard now. So I think you'll continue to see that. But in the past, it was like you're going from 8-bit to 16-bit, and you're like, these games, geez Louise, don't even look the same. Like, you look at the original Zelda and, Zelda on the Super Nintendo, and you're like, holy smokes. So I think now what everyone wants, everybody just wants Nintendo to play it safe. Now, they are absolutely crazy. They might make something completely silly in the Switch 2. It could be a completely different console. Maybe they release the Switch Pro and then they, release their successor at the same time. I wouldn't be surprised. We got to remember that Nintendo was going to have a 3-pillar strategy. They were going to have 3 different consoles out. They were going to have their home console. They were going to have a GameCube. They were going to keep the Game Boy line out there, and then they were going to have a Nintendo DS. And obviously, that ended up not being true for their portables. They didn't want to compete directly with 2 portables out there, and I think that was smart. And I think it gave them kind of a way out if the Nintendo DS completely flopped, but it ended up being way more popular. Or I should say, maybe not popular. The Game Boy was well known, but it outsold all of the Game Boys. I think combined, actually. With 154 million units, it would be pretty darn close. So I think Nintendo can play it safe here. That's what I want. I just want an updated Switch, honestly, that's backwards compatible and can play new games. I don't need anything fancy. I would like for them to redesign the Nintendo Switch store. So the eShop, that would be great. But one thing I think that led to their sales too, just a side note so I don't forget, was it was a ton of value. So they have all of their internal game development studios working on one platform now. So the cadence of releases was just insane. The third-party support was insane. The eShop, like I said, has probably too much content on there. They could have been pickier, but they were just like, nope, we'll greenlight everything that wants to go on there. So that was absolutely awesome, as you have basically all games on there. Sometimes, you're looking at a third-party game and it doesn't run very well. That does happen with several games. Even some of their first-party games, it would be nice for them to have the backwards compatibility on the Switch 2 that gives a performance boost to some of their old games. One of them was the Zelda remake. Oh my god, the remake of the Game Boy 1. Link's Awakening, which was absolutely awesome. Those games are really fun, but it didn't run well. And there was, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet as well that kind of ran into some of the same issues. Breath of the Wild was choppy at times, but honestly, like it was, you survivable. You could play it, and it doesn't ruin the experience. But they were very smart at increasing value, pumping out quality content constantly to give people a reason to buy it and not needing to drop the price. Another interesting thing they did, which I really liked, and hopefully they kind of like, continue this as well, was they had their main model. They had an updated OLED model, late in life. That's the one that I have. So significantly better screen. It's still like a premium version almost. So, $50 more. You still have your base Switch, completely fine. And then you have your Switch Lite. So you have just the portable only version, which, I mean, that's great for kids. Or great for somebody that's never going to play it. They just want to play it portably. And you can charge $200 for that. So your entry level into the Switch is $200. Your max level is $349. For which, just letting everyone know, the OLED model is the one that I would recommend if you're going to purchase one. Unless you absolutely swear that you will never play it on a TV ever, then you can stick with a Switch Lite. But I've owned all the versions, and I like them all. For a little while there, I had a yellow Nintendo Switch Lite, which I really enjoyed. During that time, I was playing it. It has a proper D-pad, but I was playing it more just portably. Like I wasn't hooking it up to the TV. Later on, I was like, I'd like to be able to throw it on the TV again, occasionally. But honestly, I like the option of it, but I like the OLED screen so much that I would have switched anyway. It's a little bit bigger too. But they did a great job of not diminishing their brand by lowering the cost of it. It was at a competitive price point. So seriously, you're a parent, and I get buying a PlayStation 5. Like, I get why you would have it, or an Xbox if you're, silly like me. But I completely understand why you would have it, why you would want it, and so you might have your child who says, yo, I want a PlayStation 5. That's really what I want. I'll cut grass, I'll save up money, I'll save up birthday money. That's what I want. Completely understand it. But you can't tell me that from an outside perspective, if you're buying this as a gift and you're like, hey, I can, get a $200 console for, my 8-year-old, or, a $349 OLED Switch with all these awesome games versus $700 for a PS5 Pro, like, come on. Like, unless it's like, hey, I want a gaming PC or I want a PS5 Pro, like either or, that's what I want. I do not want a Switch. Like, these are the games I want to play for it. Like, you can't tell me something that is half the cost doesn't result in some sales. Or, hey, we're going to do, Christmas presents, and hey, we can swing, we can actually do 2 Nintendo Switches as opposed to 1 PlayStation 5, like, for the same price. So it's a competitive price point for what they're selling, and they never diminish the value by cutting it to try to sell it. They didn't need to. But trust me, that is tantalizing. That is also tantalizing for first-party games to be like, oh, okay, after a while they're going to be, $30, or we're going to discount them. They held firm, and it has paid off. And that's not easy to do, because throughout pretty much all of Nintendo's, console history, there's always like Nintendo Switch, or excuse me, Nintendo Selects or Nintendo Choice, whatever it is, where it's like a popular game and they re-release it for $20. Which I really liked on the GameCube. And it's kind of funny, from a collector standpoint, like those Player's Choice versions aren't as valuable, which is funny. But I mean, honestly, it gave me the opportunity during the GameCube era to pick up a few titles that I really wanted for like $20. But the Nintendo Switch has just been awesome. It's been my most played console the last 7 years, just with how life has changed and responsibilities and everything like that, and work and whatnot. It gives me the opportunity to actually game a little bit. Now, I don't play as many games. I'm not a video game reviewer anymore. I do miss it. And it gives you an interesting lens of kind of critiquing software and explaining, what a game is really about and being like the subject matter expert on it, which is that was always a blast of like, hey, I'm going to play this game so much that I can really like I have a breadth of knowledge to, compare it to something or explain why somebody should play it or explain why somebody should be cautious of it or, hey, if you like this genre, this fits into what you're kind of looking for. But, if you don't like this genre, there's probably some other titles that might kind of benefit you better. But it's been kind of interesting as a more casual video gamer to play, Pokemon Unite or Diablo 3 or like 5 titles throughout the years and just pick up and play, and it's easy. It's very easy to play it. It's also one thing I will explain, the core competency of the Nintendo Switch, like what it does best of it switches from home console to portable console. It's instant. It's crazy. So like when maybe everyone's kind of used to it now, 7 years later, but you would have it plugged into the TV and you see, Link running around, fighting stuff on the TV. You pick it up, it automatically appears on the screen and you start playing. You're still playing it. So what the Switch, like the gimmick of it, the main selling point, it does it just absolutely flawlessly. And I think, it showcases what it does so well that it kind of led to these like sales of like, hey, I can, play all of these games portably, which I think is another big thing as well, which led to, the copycat with the Steam Deck, is I think there is something there where people just want to be able to play main console games portably. Like honestly, if I could have played Elden Ring on my Switch, I would have just done that. I wouldn't have bought it on Xbox. Like I would much rather have the portability option built in, even if it's something I don't use. Like it's nice to have it on there. So for whatever the Switch 2 is, and the feeling is that the Switch 2 is going to sell well. Like just what I'm reading out there, the articles I'm seeing, the overall feel, people talking about this, the excitement of the leaks too. Like just kind of feeling it. It seems like whatever the Switch 2 turns out to be is going to be, I don't know if it's going to sell as well as the original Switch, but it's going to be a massive success. So I think this is something where the ball is kind of in Nintendo's court and they can make this as successful as they want. Now, the tricky part is going to be the software piece. So what games are in development? Because keep in mind, there's been 2 Zelda games on this thing. There's been a mainline Mario game. They have Mario Kart 8. They have... What do they launch it with? What is their focus? There's been 2 generations of Pokemon. I like Sword and Shield more than Sword and Shield more than Scarlet and Violet. But what's the launch game? What are they gonna like? What are they developing exclusively for it right now? Which I find interesting. And for software, do they plan on adding enhancements due to the more powerful hardware on the backwards compatibility portion? Which that would be absolutely amazing. That's also tricky too. So I think how they handle the software is going to kind of dictate the success of it. Like you immediately want to be able to play your existing library, but you do want a reason for people to buy the new Switch. So I can get by for 6 to 12 months on just playing my Switch games on the updated hardware, or trying out and downloading some of the games that I kind of pushed off that maybe didn't run so well on the current hardware. But that's kind of tricky. That's going to be cumbersome for that part. So with that part, that would be good if they make it backwards compatible. But then the new part is, what are they developing? Because they did not pull any punches with any of their franchises. They weren't holding anything back. And you're going to need a Mario, a Zelda, a Pokemon, an Animal Crossing. You need something early to kind of give something like a killer app. So Breath of the Wild, that was the main Switch game at launch, and it showed. So is it another Zelda game? Like I honestly, I don't know what it's going to be. But I think sticking with a very similar, like, hey, this is just a souped up Nintendo Switch, and not being fancy and, doing something like goggles or something ridiculous that makes it difficult to play. I would be very excited to just see more of the same with better hardware. but it feels like the feeling out on the streets is that it's going to be very successful. Now, the second thing with the Switch 2 that they're going to have to focus on is they have to, as they go into production, things are going to leak. People, like, it's going to happen. People are going to, sell photos and sell pictures of them, and that's going to leak like crazy. But you need to have enough of these. You do not want a situation like the PlayStation 5 where it's just, you can't, I didn't see a PS5 until the past couple of years. The first like 2 or 3 years, I never even like physically saw one in a store. You don't want scalpers to get a hold of them. You don't want to only launch with like 100,000 of them, and they're literally all going to be bought by scalpers and resold for like 3 or 4 times the amount on eBay. It's super frustrating. Like, they want to have so many that scalpers just don't make any money, or people are stupid, and some, the markup's like $50 or something like that. So they need to really manufacture a lot of them. So that makes you think of what time to launch it, right? You launch it in spring. So summer generally in the video game industry is slower. Fall and the holiday season is where your big hitters and your big releases, like, you want to release that time because that's when the most people are buying the most amount of video games, the most amount of presents. Like, that's when you want to launch like your big games. But maybe you launch it in like March, and you kind of cover the summer doldrums, and you kind of build up your user base for like maybe like a big game launch in the fall. And also that gives you enough time, hopefully fingers crossed, to kind of ramp up production and have, production good for the holiday period. Now, keep in mind, if they have like just 1 million of these things, it's going to be a disaster for everybody. You're going to have to pre-order. Are they going to allow for pre-orders? Like, because then, scalpers are going to get them. Do you just, you don't stop taking pre-orders. You just take all the pre-orders. So if, scalpers are going to be stupid and try to buy 10 of these, then they're going to be stuck with, 10 of them because we're going to have plenty to sell. So I think having a ramped up production, fingers crossed, that eliminates, the craziness of having shortages for years and years to come. Like, you want to be able to sell these things and get them in the hands and not have to worry about markup from scalpers. Cost too. I'm very curious. Do you keep the $349 price point? Sony came out and announced the $700 console. They're officially, I think, their most expensive ever. Even more than the PlayStation 3 launch. So, hey, there you go. Like, can you keep it at the 350 price point? I mean, if you can, that looks really good for you as well. Because I'm telling you, if they're releasing a PlayStation 5 Pro at $700, whatever the PS6 is, it's going to be expensive. It ain't going to be cheap. So, yeah, the Nintendo Switch is just... I'm reluctant as somebody that has played video games for a very long time to call it my favorite console, but I will say, in the second half of my life, it is my favorite console. It's not even close. And it's been very interesting seeing the outlook of Nintendo change, where for so long people just used to bash it for being, something for kids. And it is for kids, but it's for everyone. And like, Nintendo's popularity is just insane. They have an amusement park. They have a movie that did really well, the Super Mario Brothers movie. They kind of rectified that. I think it was like over $1 billion, in the box office. Like, the perception has just changed. Everybody's like, we love Nintendo now. And it used to just be a slog of, Nintendo's for kids. It's stupid. Get a PlayStation or an Xbox. You're lame if you buy a Nintendo. And none of that's there. Like, all this newer generation of kids, they all love Mario, they all love Pokemon. Like, it's just absolutely crazy. Like, that animosity isn't there from what I see between the hardware manufacturers. Just, hey, this is cool. Like, I like Zelda, I like Pokemon. So it's been absolutely amazing, just kind of like watching the success of it. So we'll be on the lookout for whatever the Nintendo Switch 2, actually ends up being. But those were just some of my thoughts. I kind of wanted to cover my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch, kind of just at a basic level, and, the future of Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch 2. Who knows? If we get an official announcement, I'll probably do, another podcast just to kind of cover what it'll look like, what it is, what my hopes and expectations are. But it's very nice seeing Nintendo where they're at now and how mainstream and popular they are. And like, it's almost like they're, you know, a technology, like a video game Disney. So it's been it's been so great just seeing the success that it's been hard earned and hard fought, through some failed consoles, and how popular it is and how popular all of their game franchises have become. But I absolutely love the Nintendo Switch. I don't know if I'd recommend buying one right now. You might want to wait like another month or two to see if they announce the Switch 2 and get ready for the crazy pre-orders. But yeah, this has been episode 20 of Gaming's Lost Memories. I'm your host, BigReed, and I hope you enjoyed.